Have you ever imagined what would happen if the Sahara got filled with millions of tons of water? Well, here's the result in front of you. No editing, no tricks, no desert mirages. This is Egypt. This is the same country that's famous not only for its pyramids, but also for the huge amount of land that's completely unsuitable for farming. It takes up 96% of the country's territory, so there's literally nowhere to plant crops. Only the Nile Valley helps, but that's just 4% of Egypt's total area. Because of this, the country's extremely limited in what it can grow, which leads to heavy reliance on imports. Plus, Egypt suffers from a constant water shortage, and with the population growing, there's just no place for people to move. But look over here. Here are wheat fields, a lot of greenery, big lakes, irrigation systems driving through the fields. In short, everything needed for farming and comfortable living is right here. But how did Egypt manage to transform the desert so much? Let's find out. New Valley Project. The New Valley Project kicked off in 1997, focused on turning sandy land into green space. At the time, they said a canal was needed to bring water to areas where the Nile couldn't boost the fertility of desert soil. As a result, Sheikh Zayed Canal was created, with a total length of 32 miles. Building it was a real challenge, as the first thing that had to be done was the concrete structure. It's 2.1 miles long with a bottom width of 31 feet and was needed to fix the differences in water level. Then the main canal was built with a bottom width of 98 feet, a slope ratio of 2:1, and a depth of 20 feet. They decided it would be made of sand reinforced with cement. Additionally, bridges with a load capacity of 70 tons were built so that the canal could be crossed, along with everything needed to control the water, including a spillway. Actually, the main goal of the New Valley Project is the greening of 900 square miles of land that was never meant for agriculture. Of course, this can't be done with just one big canal, so the construction process was supplemented with additional branches. First, a 26-mile canal was added, then a second one 22 miles long, followed by the third and fourth ones, which are 12 and 37 miles long, respectively. Wait, you said this country's suffering from a lack of water. So where did they get it from to transform barren desert lands? There's this lake called Nasser. By the way, it's artificial and was created because of the construction of the Aswan Dam, which blocked Egypt's main waterway, the Nile. The resulting reservoir is 298 miles long, 10 miles wide, and covers a total area of 2,000 square miles. In short, there's a lot of water there, so it can be taken from there to transform areas where water's in short supply. And finally, the last element, which is clearly not the least important in the New Valley Project, the Mubarak pumping station. Actually, it's through this station that water is pumped from Lake Nasser into canals, which then spread it across the barren lands. This engineering structure is impressive. To begin with, it's one of the largest pumping stations in the world, moving up to 42 million cubic feet of water with an annual capacity that can reach 194 billion cubic feet. 24 vertical pumps are arranged in 2 parallel lines, and the depth of the intake channel is up to 164 feet. Plus, the station won't be affected by extreme heat or sandstorms. Even earthquakes won't take it down. The structure is so robust that it can easily handle seismic tremors. In short, the design matches the conditions in which it was created. Well, did you expect anything else given the $436 million spent on building the station? Although this amount might seem like just pocket change compared to the estimated final cost of the New Valley Project, which according to some sources could reach $70 billion. A huge amount, but the result is clearly visible. This is what the area looked like from space in 1989. You can see part of Lake Nasser in the lower right corner of the shot, but there are no canals, no sign of greenery or water. The project only started in 1997. Now let's take a look at what the satellites captured in 2001. See the difference? For sure. Only 4 years have passed since the start of the project, but there's already a whole lake. By the way, it wasn't even because of the New Valley. What we see here is the birth of the Tashka Lakes, which weren't created by human work, but as a result of the overflow from Lake Nasser. Though it was actually formed because of the dam, so humans did play a part in it. So it seems that the Egyptians already flooded millions of tons of water into the desert by 2001. But let's get back to the New Valley Project. By 2001, you can already see the channels that have appeared. Then we jump straight to 12 years ahead into 2013. By now, you can see the expanded network of canals that carry water from Nasser to the desert lands. You can also spot the green circles. This is exactly what the project's organizers were aiming for. crops grown using the center pivot irrigation. So what exactly is center pivot irrigation? It's a process when specialized systems water a specific area around its axis. That's why you see those green geometric shapes. Why go for this method? Just because center pivot irrigation is hands down one of the most efficient ways to ensure crop yields when resources are tight. On top of that, it reduces the need for intensive soil treatment and minimizes water runoff and soil erosion. In short, they picked the best option available. Now let's go back to the satellite images, but this time from 2017. You can see how the canal system is spread out a bit and the circles have gotten greener. This is the year 2019. The system's still developing and the number of circles keeps growing, although not at such a fast pace. And by the way, if you were wondering what happened to the Toshka lakes that appeared here at the beginning of the century, they've all just dried up. The water bodies are completely dependent on the flooding of the Lake Nasser. Here's the proof. In 2021, due to the dam construction, the lakes grew in size, so the group of water bodies expanded to around 500 square miles. As for the New Valley project, well, it's pretty obvious. The number of green circles has gone up significantly. The canal system has also gotten bigger. Now let's take a look at the very last picture from 2023. The lakes have grown even bigger, and now they're taking irrigation water from them too. You can see the green circles right by the reservoirs. No matter how you look at it, no matter how much was spent on the project, even $70 billion, it really works. Where there was absolutely nothing in 1989, now there are green spaces. And all of this despite the huge pile of problems that were encountered during the project. The Western Desert, the place where all the transformation happens, is actually very salty. Plus, aquifers were found here, meaning there's water underground. So how does this tie in, and why is it a problem? The thing is, when irrigation happens, the salt mixes with the underground water, making it undrinkable. Besides, the clay minerals found in the soil became a problem for large wheeled machines, which were spinning around their axis and irrigating the infertile land. The wheels would get stuck in the wet clay, which would then dry up and bring the machines to a standstill. So the project was basically abandoned at one point because of all this. However, the value of the New Valley for Egypt turned out to be so high that the project was brought back to life. And right now, they're actively dumping tons of water into the desert to make the region green. New Delta. After all the talk about transforming such a distant region, the question comes up, why not take the same approach and turn the Nile Delta into fertile land? This is where most of the population lives, where the most developed cities are. This is where all of Egypt's valuable resources are located. Naturally, such a project already exists, and we'll go into more detail about it now. Near the existing Nile Delta, a new one's being built, the New Delta. This is a true mega project already dubbed the biggest in the history of Egypt's agricultural efforts. The plan is to make over 2.2 million fedans of green land. For those not familiar with the Egyptian measure of area, 1 fedan is about 1 acre. So just imagine how huge of an area they decided to improve. By 2023, roughly 35% of the work on the water pipes has been finished, and 65% of the work on the open space is done. In particular, the Egyptians are constructing an artificial river running parallel to the Nile. The planned length will reach 71 miles. The first canal is 26 miles long, including 16 miles of pipes and 10 miles of open channels, and in total it can carry about 2.6 billion gallons of water. By the way, this project is just part of the New Delta, which also includes the construction of 310 miles of roads, digging underground wells for water extraction, building 2 power plants with a total capacity of 350 megawatts, and an electricity grid that stretches for 125 miles. All in all, Egypt has grand plans. But let's get back to the canals. The second canal stretches for 106 miles, transporting about 1.8 billion gallons of water a day for irrigation across an area of over 1,235 square miles. The third canal consists of 2 pipelines 7.5 miles long for irrigating just 100 square miles. And although it's a small area, every inch of land is crucial for Egypt. These channels are complemented by a number of stations that deal with purifying water used for agricultural purposes, as well as many pumping stations. After all, the water has to be pumped somehow. For example, this station will be able to pump 2 billion gallons of water. When it comes to wastewater treatment plants, these are mega projects in their own right. For example, one of them was even declared the largest in the world by the Guinness World Records. What's more, it became a record holder for being not only the biggest, but also one of the most spacious and reliable in operation among facilities of its kind. Such a facility can process 230,000 gallons of water per second. The speed of sludge treatment is also impressive. After all, this installation is a record holder. It handles 1,500 pounds of material in just 1 second. And yeah, they built the station in 24 months. We're not sure if that's a record or not, but we can confidently say that completing such a sophisticated project in such a short time is definitely fast. In short, the Nile Delta won't be left without greenery either. And what greenery? By scale, the project is pretty much on par with the one happening in the south of the country. Reasons for building. These large projects are mainly needed to find a place to settle the population. Right now, it exceeds 106 million people, making Egypt the country with the highest population of any African nation. And the growth continues despite the authorities' policies, who no longer just hint, but directly say it's probably time to slow down. But who's listening? Hardly anyone. So the projections show that by 2030, the population might hit 120 million. This is huge pressure on the country's infrastructure, medical, and educational systems. Also, organizing housing for workers is no easy task, so cities just can't keep up with the population, and they're growing at far slower rates. However, often there's no place to expand them because Egypt already occupies all the nature-given fertile land in the Nile Delta and its valley. Moreover, the government's actually giving away land that appears as a result of project development. For example, the authorities launched a program under which college graduates will receive land in the New Valley project area, more than 1 acre each. What are you supposed to do in these new districts? Where can you work? There are no business centers or any of the other city luxuries, so you can't just chill in an office. The only option is farming. The government expects that the people moving to these new green zones will focus on it. This, by the way, is very important for Egypt in its current state. For example, the country imports 70% of its wheat. So literally, any geopolitical instability that could affect supplies will cause the country to start starving. If other suppliers are found, the cost of food could simply rise. This is exactly why the authorities focus so much on greening desert lands. The president of Egypt, right after the New Valley project was revived, stated that the land should be developed as quickly as possible to produce roughly 500,000 tons of wheat. And guess what? In 2022, it was reported that Egypt had cultivated the greening areas, harvesting the crop, and ultimately getting 550,000 tons of relief from the food crisis. Of course, agriculture doesn't stop at wheat. In the Toshka Lakes area, they plan to grow 2.5 million unique Arabian date palms, which will also have a positive impact on the country's food sector. And all of this sounds good, but there's one big but. Egypt certainly influences the success of its greening projects, but, for example, the New Valley completely depends on Lake Nasser and the Nile River, and right now they largely depend on Ethiopia. In 2020, the country built the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam on a tributary of the Nile, the Blue Nile. For Ethiopia, the dam will be a source of electricity for 60% of its population, as well as a driver of economic growth through the sale of surplus power. The dam is a partial or full blockage of the flow, which means the Nile will get less water. This could lead to serious problems for Egypt, which is completely and totally dependent on the river. Yes, the water will continue to flow down into the Nile, but it'll happen more slowly than if the Blue Nile were flowing without any dams. In other words, at some point, Nasser will start getting less water, which means that irrigation for all those green circles in the New Valley might be reduced. This doesn't bode well for agriculture in the transformed region. There's actually a study that says things aren't so bad. The evaporation in the lake created by the dam is much lower than of the same Nasser reservoir, so in the end, Egypt should get even more water. Overall, countries need to deal with this, and they're managing it quite well. In 2022, as you remember, Egypt harvested 550,000 tons of wheat from its New Valley, so there hasn't been a catastrophe yet. Great Man-Made River. But projects in Egypt aren't the only ones of their kind in Africa. In the desert areas of Libya, there's a wonder that's not marked on any tourist map, but in terms of scale and significance, it can be compared to the most impressive irrigation projects. It's the Great Man-Made River, a huge underground network that supplies 1.7 billion gallons of drinking water daily to Libyan settlements. The project was so important and complex that Libya's former leader, Muammar Gaddafi, called it the eighth wonder of the world. In the 1960s, 4 giant underground reservoirs from the Nubian sandstone aquifer were discovered in Libya. Muammar Gaddafi decided to tap into their potential and create a water system that would supply not only Libya, but also neighboring countries like Egypt, Sudan, and Chad. In 1983, the Project Authority was established, and by 1996, Artisan Water reached the homes of the capital, Tripoli. The project had big plans to supply fresh water to 70% of the population and stretch for 1,755 miles. So what's so special about this project? First, it's an almost endless underground water source that doesn't get significantly damaged over time. Second, it's a closed method of transporting water using steel pipes buried deep underground. Most of them are more than 1,640 feet deep. Third, it's crystal clear water, which costs just 35 cents for 264 gallons. With its water project, Libya could start a green revolution that would solve many food issues in Africa, and most importantly, it would bring stability and economic independence. The project was launched and had a future, but then came the overthrow of Gaddafi, 2 civil wars. So now, even though it's still running, it's clearly not working the way it was originally planned. The system isn't properly maintained, some parts have been dismantled. In short, the great man-made river is in a bad state.